Oh, there was this hillbilly guy who lived up here. He had 2 tikis in his yard, and I asked him. They're gone now. I guess somebody stole them. But I came up there and I talked to him one day, and I asked him if he was willing to sell them, and he said, "Them's Ma's." Then he told us a story how her boyfriend gave it to her years ago and stuff, and didn't want to sell them. It was right here where the RVs are. My name is Bosko. I'm a Tiki carver, and I live here in Escondido, California. I was first exposed to tikis as a child. I can't even remember the first time I saw one. They were always in the environment. Then I went to art school. I became an artist, and through the mid-'80s, I started collecting mugs. I had a small shelf in my room at that time, and it held about 30, 40 mugs. And I remember staring at it, wondering if I could ever fill it up with tiki mugs. And then, you know, a few years later, it was full, and then they went on the top of that shelf, and then I needed another shelf. And the more I got into tiki, the more I realized there was more things other than just the mugs to collect. We found out about this guy, Sven, who I met in '91, I believe it was. And he told me about the California Tiki carvers. When I found out about the carvers, it was kind of like an epiphany. I realized that all the things I had seen as a child that kind of all came back. All those tikis made sense. Tiki was supposed to be the first man. As 50s, you know, American culture kind of collided with it. They just named all these carvings tiki. And I went to a lot of trouble to find authentic books on Polynesian art, and then wherever you could see that kind of thing, it's limited where you can see the authentic Polynesian art. Taking those things, and then I had the ability to design anything, and then I was lucky enough to have my father who could carve anything. Literally, he was a woodworker. The only thing that was limiting is the wood itself. You know, what it would allow you to do, because palm wood is not like a regular wood, and once you pass a certain point, it becomes fibrous. Behind me are those are made out of a stucco composite. I like working in that. Commonly, I only use redwood or palm wood, but I've carved in many other woods. I would just take everything I had seen and try and meld it and create maybe a new style of tiki. Some tikis, I just changed very little from the original one that I was sort of maybe basing it on, or something like that. Or some I would just completely think up new designs. And the best tikis from the '60s, or my favorites, were the ones that had a quality like they were from another world, like a space alien. They looked like an alien, and that's one of my favorite things. I like to put that into some of my carving, and yet I like to also retain a primitive quality to them. So it's a balance. When I do the tikis, I'm trying to do the same thing the Polynesians did, and each tiki they made, they tried to imbue it with what was called a mana, and this was supposed to reflect the individual they're trying to portray. They're supposed to reflect their personality. It's all of them. I want them to have that kind of a power that you see when you first see a tiki. It's just they're really fierce looking, sort of. They exude this kind of a power, and that's what I would like each of the pieces to have. Is it's kind of stand on its own. All I'm doing is the whole time I'm working, I'm looking at the balance to make sure that it makes some sort of a sense visually to me. And so the further along it goes, the more I'm doing that. I'm just fine-tuning that. And the more time I spend, obviously, the more they cost. If it's a really nice tiki, I'm kind of playing with the different planes and things like that. So every time you do one, you always kind of... if you do the same style, you'll notice things that you should have changed, and you change it in the next one, and there's a kind of a progression. Where I try not to carve the same one 2 times in a row. And because what I'll do is I'll look at a log, and generally a log will have a kind of a shape to it, and then that shape will define what the tiki will look like. So I try to manipulate that. Urban archaeology I stepped into kind of by accident, because once I saw that these tiki places were unique, I started looking for them. I would go looking for restaurants or apartment buildings or something. The rule was, early on when Tiki News first came out, they had their Tiki Manifesto, and you weren't allowed to take a tiki that was functioning, that was still serving a purpose somewhere. But if you saw one that was going to be destroyed, then you were supposed to take it. And my brother and I were into it earlier here in San Diego than other people, because now there's not that much left to destroy, but earlier on there was a lot was being torn down. lights from Kelbos, from the islands, the Hanalei, from the Kona Inn on Shelter Island. And there was a lot that we tried to say that we just couldn't get that we couldn't say. But it's sort of you see what it is that you have in your hands. It's this unique piece of art. It would be like if somebody was throwing Greek art or Egyptian art in the trash somewhere, and nobody was doing anything to stop it. I mean, that's kind of how we looked at it. You're saving this history. People should care about this culture. They don't have to like it, but they should appreciate what it was. It was part of their culture. It was part of the culture that brought America to where it is today, whether you like it or not. Every popular art movement, since Impressionism, let's say, everything was derided by the critics and by most people. Movements like Impressionism or Cubism or Abstract Expressionism got their names because they would use these terms of derision. They're trying to put the movement down, much like they say with kitsch. It's somehow it's less than a real style. It's kitsch, and that's the same thing with this. And they're important monuments. They're important elements of our culture. You can build a ugly stucco building any place, but this thing is only going to be here. Once it's gone forever. It will go with the sands of time. So if we could preserve some of this so the next generation can see how people lived, I think that would be a wonderful thing.
I mean, somebody got paid to do a study to figure out black kids different from white kids and color. Okay.
That special kind of rum?
Yeah, this is like the ingredient in all the tropical drinks. They all do is Demerara rum, lemon heart, and that's the higher grade. So you guys get the low grade tonight.
Okay.